Welcome to the Grace at Last podcast. Here we hope you find freedom from religion and traditions passed down by man that God never intended for us to struggle with. Let's quit looking around us and begin to look within at God in us and realize all we need is already there. Together, guided by the Holy Spirit, let's learn what God really thinks of us and discover what is pleasing to Him. I think we're going to find out it's a whole lot easier than what we thought.
Hi, Corinne here, and welcome to episode 151 of our Grace at Last podcast. This episode is entitled Performance Pressure and How to Be Free. And in our last episode, episode 150, we talked about fear-based teaching. And we focused on two major drivers, and we talked about hell and judgment. Because so many of us were taught to follow God and the fear of consequences if we didn't, and not from a place of security. And if you listened to that episode, you probably felt it. You probably recognized pieces of your own story in it, because so many of us were not taught to follow God from a place of security. We were taught to follow Him from a place of fear of consequences, fear of getting it wrong, fear of what might happen if we didn't measure up. We talked about how when hell is used as a threat, it doesn't produce a relationship. It produces anxiety. It keeps people focused on avoiding punishment instead of actually experiencing connection with God. And it turns our faith into a survival mode. And survival mode sounds like this. Am I okay? Did I do enough? Did I pray the right prayer? Have I done enough good things? Have I told enough people? Am I really saved? And how do I know for sure? And all of that, well, it creates this constant internal pressure where you're always checking yourself. You're always evaluating, always wondering if you're safe. And not only is that exhausting, it is also a complete misrepresentation of who God is. Because let's be honest for a second, if we step back and really think about it, the idea that God tells us to forgive people over and over again, to love our enemies, to show mercy, and then at the same time would endlessly torment people forever without end, that doesn't line up. And so we need to understand hell and what we believe about hell. And if that's the version of God that we're presenting, we need to rethink that. Because that version produces fear, not love. It produces distance, not a relationship. And as I mentioned in the last episode back in January of 2026, I did a 4-part series on hell and life after death. So if this is a topic that's stirring something in you, I really encourage you to go back and listen to that series. It'll give you a fuller foundation of what we're talking about. And then we talked about judgment. It's another big one. So many people live with this underlying belief that the future is still on trial, that one day everything will be reviewed and the outcome is still uncertain, and that somehow their standing with God is still being decided. But what we're talking about, well, I believe it's the truth, and that is that Jesus was fully judged. And if you're in Him, you're not waiting for judgment. You're standing in the result of His finished work. And that's not a small change. It changes everything, because now you move from striving to resting, and you move from fear to trust, from performance to relationship. And here's the reality. Even when we begin to hear this message, even when something inside of us starts to come alive and say, that sounds like freedom, there's still patterns that try to pull us back. And one of the biggest ones is what we are going to talk about today. And that is performance pressure and how to be free. That is the name of today's podcast, and the fear of not being enough. And I just want to ask you something. Have you ever felt like no matter how much you do for God, it's still not enough? Like you're always one step behind? Like if you could just fix that one habit, then you would finally be where you're supposed to be? Or maybe one failure makes you question everything. If that resonates with you, then this episode is for you. Because today we're talking about two of the biggest pressure systems in Christianity today, and that is performance-based Christianity, performance-based faith. and the constant feeling that God is disappointed in you. And this one, it's tricky, it's subtle, and that's why it's so powerful. No one usually says it out loud. You're not going to hear someone stand up and say, you need to perform to be accepted by God. But it shows up in messages, and it sounds like this. If your faith is real, you'll prove it. If you really love God, it will show. If you're not producing, something's wrong. And on the surface, that can sound right. It can sound logical, and it can even sound motivating. But we need to look deeper, and we need to ask, what is it actually producing in people? Because what it often creates is a group of people who are constantly weighing themselves. Again, am I doing enough? Am I growing fast enough? Why do they seem to be more spiritual than me? Why do they pray more than me? Why do they seem more disciplined? Why do they look like they have it all together? And you know what? That comparison game, it will drain the life right out of you. It'll keep you stuck in a cycle where you are always measuring and never resting. So let's just be honest for a moment. A lot of people are not actually enjoying their relationship with God. They're managing it. They're tracking it. They're trying to prove it, and they're trying to improve it. And that, again, is exhausting because now your relationship with God feels like a project instead of a connection. It feels like something you have to maintain instead of something you get to experience. But here is the truth that we need to come back to. Fruit was never meant to be something that you force. It's something that grows. Think about that for a second. You don't walk up to a tree and demand that it produce fruit faster. No, you don't yell at it. You don't shame it. You don't compare it to another tree and say, why are you not like that one? Growth is natural when the root is healthy. So what if the issue is not your effort, but the issue is what you believe? What if it's what you believe about yourself? And even more than that, what if it's about what you believe about God? Because if you believe you're deficient, you will live like you're deficient. If you believe you are lacking, you will constantly try to fill that gap. If you believe you're not enough, you'll spend your life trying to become enough. But if you believe you are already connected, something changes, and now growth becomes a byproduct. Change becomes natural. And now your life begins to reflect what's already true instead of trying to earn what you think is missing. Let me ask you a real question. If no one was watching your life, would you still feel pressure to prove your faith? That's an important question. It's one I've been asking myself lately. It really reveals what's driving us. What is driving us? Is it love or is it pressure? Is it connection? Or is it the fear of being seen as not enough? Because performance-based faith always needs an audience. It needs validation. It needs something external to confirm that what you're doing is right. Real relationship is not about proving. It's about knowing. Knowing you are loved. Knowing you are secure. Knowing that your standing with God is not unstable. And here's where I want to challenge you. If your relationship with God feels like constant pressure, something is off. And that's not how this was designed. You were not created to live under a constant weight of trying to measure up. You were created to live loved. And when you live from that place, everything changes because your starting point changes. It's accurate and it doesn't deceive us into dead works. Our motivation changes. Our desires begin to line up naturally. Our actions, well, they come from identity, not from fear. And this is where so many people get stuck. They're trying to change behavior without addressing belief. They're trying to produce fruit without tending to the root. And it keeps them in cycles of frustration. They try harder. They push more. They commit again. And then when they fall short, they feel discouraged. And then they start all over again. And the cycle repeats. But what if the way out is not more effort? What if the way out is a new understanding? What if it is actually about seeing clearly what has already been done for you? Because when you understand that you are already accepted, you stop striving for acceptance. When you understand that you're already loved, you stop trying to earn love. And when you understand that you're already secure, you stop living in fear of losing it. And from that place, something beautiful happens. You begin to live free, not careless, but free, not disconnected, but extremely connected, and not out of pressure. You are not pressured. You are at peace. So if you've been feeling tired, if you've been feeling like you are constantly trying to prove that you are doing this right, I want you to hear this clearly. You were never meant to carry that. You were never meant to live under that kind of weight. And maybe today is the moment where you begin to let that go. Not by trying harder to let it go, but by simply recognizing it for what it is. A system that was built on pressure, not on truth. And as you start to see that, you can begin to step out of it. You can begin to experience something different, something lighter, something real, and something rooted in love instead of fear. And recognizing this and asking the Holy Spirit to show us when we're being led by an audience of people, and ask Him to help us to be led by an audience of one, and that is the Lord, everything changes. Again, our motivation, just our experience, our outlook, our mindset. Because this is not just about identifying the problem, it's about walking in freedom. And that is so important to understand. This performance-based Christianity and how to be free is one of the most liberating experiences we can renew our minds to understand. So I want to encourage you to ask the Holy Spirit to help you. None of us are completely free. With Facebook, with social media, with living before audiences, and everybody being famous and having the opportunity to post and take pictures and all of that as much as we want, it creeps in, and for some more than others. And I'm taking a look at my own life. I'm examining how often do I need to be on camera? How often do I need this to be about me? And just being sensitive to that line when it's truly and honestly about sharing the gospel and not about Corinne. And I also want to talk about the second point in our podcast today, and that is the segment 2 of our podcast, and that is God is disappointed in you. And this one goes a little deeper because it's not just about what we are taught, it's about what we feel. And when we feel God is disappointed in us, something happens. Somehow, even if we wouldn't say it out loud, we've picked it up. We've picked it up along the way. And it shows up in small ways. And it's in a lot of the messages that we receive, the tone of a message. It's the way growth is talked about. It's the emphasis on doing more, being more, and trying harder. And over time, it can quietly turn into this internal belief that follows us around. God expects more from me. I should be further along by now. Why am I still struggling with this? Why does everyone else seem like they're growing faster than me? And even if you don't say those things out loud, you feel them. And that feeling, it can shape everything. Because when you believe someone is disappointed in you, you do not move toward them, but you pull back. You start to hide and avoid them. You keep things surface level. You show up, but not fully. You engage, but you're cautious, and you protect yourself. And a lot of people call that losing passion. They say, I just do not feel as close to God as I used to. I feel dry. I feel disconnected. But if we're being honest, a lot of times it's not a loss of passion. It's a mental distance that was created by pressure, by thinking that God's disappointed in us. Because pressure changes how we relate. Pressure makes everything feel heavy. It makes every minute feel like it's being evaluated. And who thrives in an environment where they feel constantly evaluated? No one does. So let me ask you something that might feel a little uncomfortable, but I think it's important. What if God's posture toward you is not disappointment? What if it never has been? What if He has never been disappointed in you? What if you have been interpreting as disappointment, it's actually something else entirely? What if God's posture toward us is an invitation? Because that's completely different. It's a different way of seeing things. Invitation does not push you away. Invitation draws you in. Invitation says, come closer. Not clean yourself up first. Not fix everything first. Not prove that you're serious this time. Just come. Because think about your own life for a moment. When do you grow the most? Is it when you feel judged? When someone is constantly pointing out where you're falling short, is that when you grow? When you feel like you're being measured against a standard that you can't quite reach? Or is it when you feel safe? When you feel seen and still accepted? When you know that you're not going to be rejected for being where you are? That's where growth actually happens. People grow best in these environments. Not pressure, not fear, not constant evaluation, but safety. And here's where it gets really personal. If you truly believed you were fully accepted by God, not tolerated, not barely getting by, not constantly being reviewed, but fully accepted, how would that change the way you approach Him? Would you avoid Him? Would you hesitate to pray? Would you feel like you need to clean yourself up before coming close? Or would you actually want to be near? Would you find yourself drawn in instead of pulling away? Because this is the tension a lot of people live in. They want closeness with God, and those two things, they don't work together. Pressure pushes away, but love pulls in. Pressure says, do more so you can finally be enough. But love says you already are. Now live from that place. And when you really begin to see that, you start to recognize the cycle many people are stuck in. And it starts with fear. Fear of punishment. Fear of getting it wrong. And that fear turns into pressure. Pressure to perform. Pressure to prove. Pressure to grow faster, do more, be more. And that pressure eventually leads to this feeling that you are never enough. No matter what you do, no matter how much effort you put in, there's always more, always another level, always another expectation. And that cycle, it will wear you out. It will drain you emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. It'll make your relationship with God feel like a burden instead of a source of life. So let's slow down and get practical. Because if you've been living in this mindset, you do not break out of it by trying harder. That would just be more of the same. You break out of it by becoming aware and making small, intentional shifts. And here are a few places to start. First, stop grading your relationship. It's not a scorecard. There are no points being tracked. You are not earning your way into anything. And if we are honest, many people live like we are. They measure their week. How much did I pray? How much did I read? Did I handle that situation right? And while those things can be meaningful, they were never meant to become measurements for your worth or your standing with God. A real relationship isn't built on constant evaluation. It's built on connection. Second, start paying attention to your internal language. This one is huge. Notice the thoughts that run through your mind. I should be better by now. I should not still struggle with this. I need to do more. I'm not where I'm supposed to be. Well, those thoughts, they feel normal to a lot of people, but they're not truth. They're pressure, and pressure has a voice. And the more you listen to it, the more it shapes how you see yourself and how you see God. So instead of just accepting those thoughts, begin to question them. Where's that thought coming from? Is that actually true? Or is it something that I have learned to believe? Because you do not have to agree with every thought that crosses your mind. Third, build from identity, not insecurity. This might be the most important shift of all. You don't grow to become accepted. You grow because you already are. And that's completely different, a completely different foundation. And when you grow from insecurity, everything feels urgent. Everything feels heavy. You're always trying to close that gap. But when you grow from identity, I think there's a sense of stability. You're not trying to become something that you're not. You're learning to live out what is already true. And growth from that place looks very different. It's not forced. It's not frantic. It's steady and natural. And it's rooted. It's rooted in reality. And you can spend your entire life trying to prove something, trying to prove you're serious, trying to prove your faith is real, trying to prove you're doing enough. And at the end of it all, you can still feel like you're falling short. Or you can start from a completely different place. Not fear, not pressure, not performance, but love. Real love. The kind that doesn't fluctuate based on your behavior. The kind that doesn't pull back when you struggle. The kind that doesn't keep a running list of where you're missing it. And when you begin to live from that place, something turns. You stop burning out. You stop striving. You stop living in cycles of trying and failing and trying again. And you begin to experience something that you may not be used to, like real peace, consistency, freedom, and even growth without the pressure. That's what it's about. And if this hits home, share this with someone who's been maybe feeling like they're not enough. And in our next episode, we're going to talk about two more big ones, two more big fear-based teaching, money and manipulation, and fear-driven end times teaching. Because fear doesn't just affect your identity, it affects your decisions. And I think it's important that we cover this. So this 4-part series on fear, we're getting underneath the surface into what is motivating us and what is driving these behaviors so that we can let that go. Because again, fear-based teaching, it affects everything. It affects every day. But when we believe different, that difference, it changes everything. Well, that's going to do it for me. And until next time, I'm Corinne, and I'm reminding you it's not about doing less. It's about believing differently. And that difference, again, changes everything. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you so much for joining us today for our Grace at Last podcast. We hope you learned a truth that will set you free and keep you living in the "it is finished" promise Jesus declared at the cross. Go to lastministry.org to learn more about who we are and what we're all about as we share this incredible inheritance God has given us in His Son.